Well, I really like this example because it's made with Arduino. So clap for Daito. Thank you, Daito. So Daito Manabe is a Japanese artist, and he's actually pretty famous. And this is what happens. It's like Arduino is more or less everywhere. And I'm here today to tell you a story of the journey that I'm living in my life, which is basically try to live up to the expectations to carry this project to the next level. So Arduino, many people think it's about electronics, but I'm going to try to prove you today that it's not about electronics, about so much more. So let me just fight my mouse. Arduino is about making stuff. So today I'm going to be talking about making stuff. Like you wake up in the morning and you want to make something and you realize that you might need the tools. And this was what's happening to me a lot of times. I was waking up in the morning and I was thinking, how can I mount this thing? How can I build this thing? And what's happening to me and what's happening to my students here at K3. So let me just slide over this. So this whole work started because I got recruited in 2001 to be teaching interaction design. And I came to Sweden straight from Infineon. And I used to be designing microchips. And suddenly I was going to be teaching design students how to program Java. So it's like two completely different universes. So I jumped from being this corridor packed with PhDs, really geniuses in how to pack a lot of transistors in a very small amount of space, to be in a room with people that didn't know math, but they really wanted to make something beautiful. So it's like two completely different worlds. So I had to deal with interaction design. Interaction design, to me, after 12 years working in the field, is about linking services, objects, and people. And so I have to be taking care of all those things. And this is what I do through Arduino. So the statement I want to make is I'm not just doing electronics, and I hope that by the time you leave this room, you will understand that. I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes or so explaining this, and I will let you 15 minutes for questions. Thank you. So the Arduino team is actually true. It's not like, I mean, when you want to start something, sometimes your own knowledge is not enough to reach, but sometimes your own contacts are not enough to reach to people. In this case, we happen to be at the same place, at the same time, having a similar need. And we just happen to, talk to each other for a very short time. And I tell you, 2 days were enough to make this thing. And this is what happened 7 years ago. So this guy here, the guy with the glasses up here, Dave Mellis, was a student to this guy here, Massimo Bansi. And I came to visit to work with this guy in making some electronics that have nothing to do with Arduino. And this was the engineer that was manufacturing the electronics for this guy. So he was incidentally going to manufacture my electronics. And this guy here, Tom, this is Gianluca, I forgot to mention his name. And Tom is a professor at New York that was coming for the summer to help out at the same school where he was working, that I was visiting, where this guy was a student. So we had a lot in common. We all like pizza. So we just sat together and said, what if we made a system that was working like this and was doing this? And 2 days later, we had a system, we were manufacturing it, and we were going to use it at the School of Design in Ivrea, in Italy, at K3. Because we basically wanted to have a tool for our students to build stuff. We wanted them to be able of expressing concepts with physical objects. That was very important for us. We made a plan looking ahead and saying like life is not only going to be software. Once we have devices that are powerful enough, we will be able of, and cheap enough, sorry, we will be able of like manufacturing hardware that will be doing very specific things, like a frying pan with a temperature sensor. This might sound like alien to you, but this is perfectly doable, right? It doesn't even need a battery because it would use induction to power up that chip inside the frying pan. You can imagine all sorts of crazy things. And by that time, our industrial designers should be ready to create concepts using that technology. That was our thing. And we wanted our schools, the school in Italy and the school in Malmo, to be ahead in this way of thinking. And we just needed tools, and Arduino was just one more tool to be able to think in that way. So this is the context. Interaction design, industrial design, interactive art, 2005. We only had screws, hammers, and our brains. For us at that time, digital technology was starting up a discussion about the interactivity. I mean, we had been talking about the web a lot, but we were jumping into the physical world. There was a book out that was called Physical Computing, actually by Tom Igoe, that was inviting people to take microcontrollers and take sensors and put them together and try to bring them into computers. But the tools were far too expensive. Interaction design for us was the creation of meaningful relationships between us humans and the artifacts. So we had to figure out which kind of symbols, which kind of items convey a meaning by themselves. The circle with the stick doesn't mean anything, or it didn't mean anything 15 years ago. Nowadays, in every single culture, this means on-off. Or, am I wrong? Doesn't it mean on-off for you? I mean, if there is anybody here who doesn't understand this thing as on-off, you could stand up and leave. So then, interactivity is also about the creation of beautiful relationships between humans and artifacts. We definitely like interaction that is aesthetically pleasant. It's like, why did you like the Nokia 5110? Because it was 10 times better than the equivalent from Sony Ericsson, right? I mean, it was black and white. It had like small buttons, but the interaction with that phone was like, 1,000 times better than with the equivalent from Alcatel or whatever other company. And that's why the iPhone was such a big success, even though the technology inside was so much worse. It's because the UI was better, and that's no doubt about it, okay? But it wasn't even 3G, the first iPhone, which is a shame. So I always use this icon. It's like when you make your website, there is like 1,000 clip arts to represent the same thing. And you have to be clever enough to find the right one. The one that not only expresses what you want to express, but the one that fits with the rest. And that's very important. And then there is a relationship of tension between us and the machines. New devices introduce new challenges. Right now, for example, I guess that all of you are against carrying an RFID chip embedded in your hand, right? But you're perfectly okay with your dogs having it on their ear. So it's just about a matter of time that we will all carry an RFID chip embedded somewhere in our bodies, or multiple RFID chips somewhere in our bodies. Right now, it provokes this conflict. It will bring up a discussion, we will fight a little bit about it, we will see the advantages, we will forget about the disadvantages, and we'll just get them on. This is how it is. It's like right now you're having something that helps you be identifiable and find you everywhere you are at, which is your phone. It's just a matter of time until you embed it in your body. Just embrace it, right? So technology and the human being meet through interaction design, or we use interaction design to make us meet. And we have these three important aspects. How pretty it is, how well it conveys a meaning, and whether or not it provokes some kind of tension. The tension is where the business opportunities are. Just think about it. If you work in like a 5 years time vision, you're going to be working with something that right now is really kinky, but in 5 years it's going to be super hot. That's what I like to be. So yeah, I like to show this picture about phones. It's like, phones right now, they made it to a point where you can give a phone to a kid. I mean, 15 years ago, you wouldn't give this gigantic Motorola phone to anybody, mostly because if a kid was carrying this thing, would probably hurt himself. If it was like falling or something. It's not so much about the phone breaking, it was that expensive. But nowadays, with this thing, technology can do so many more things. Among other things, it can help you find your kid somewhere. by a small app that just pushes GPS information to a website, right? So the question in 2005 was, how can we bring this digital world to interact with the physical one? Which are the available tools? And the answer was basic stamp from Parallax. There was like this very concrete device that everybody in the world were using. It was that expensive, and it didn't really offer us many options. It wasn't even USB. So we couldn't prototype things because it didn't talk to our computers. So we had to come up with something else. Oh, yeah, how? Well, I'm going to tell you how we did it at K3. At K3, I was used to do things like this. Try to make experiments with technology and fashion, for example. This experiment was called